White police officers acting against unarmed black suspects. Well, it's ignited tensions between African Americans and police. Here to talk about it, former St. Louis police officer, Reddit Hudson, author of the Washington Post op-ed, "Being a cop showed me just how racist and violent the police are. There's only one fix," he writes. Thanks so much for being with us, officer. Appreciate it. As a former police officer, do you think it's the case that if Tamir Rice in Cleveland or Eric Garner in New York or Michael Brown in Ferguson had been white, they might be alive today?
Potentially. I just saw a video yesterday on Facebook where someone was illustrating the difference between how white subjects and black subjects are handled. And it showed a middle-aged, maybe a little bit older white guy in the middle of the street with an assault rifle. And it had the audio tape of the calls that went in complaining about this guy walking down the street with an assault rifle. And the police arrived and listened to him for 10 minutes tell them what they would and wouldn't do about him having the assault rifle. Ultimately, they approach him after about 10 minutes. He puts the gun down, they unload the gun, sit down next to him, and begin a conversation. It's not audible what they're discussing, but if that had been Michael Brown, if that had been Eric Garner, if that had been any black man in this country, I believe he would have been fired upon almost immediately, as was tragically 12-year-old Tamir down in Cleveland, where the officers hadn't even exited the vehicle before they opened fire on this kid.
Yeah, it's a tragic story, and you of course bring this very interesting perspective. Having been a member of the St. Louis police force, you write in your op-ed, "Many of my peers were deeply racist." How widespread do you think this problem is?
I think it's widespread. I think it's widespread. And early in my career, there was a website that was established called St. Louis Cop Talk. And you could go on that website anonymously, which is very important, without leaving your name, and express any point of view about anything that you wanted to. And largely the dialogue on that site was so racist and vitriolic and angry as it was directed towards the black community in St. Louis that ultimately at some point the site administrator had to shut it down. It's a major problem. And the anger that you see in the streets right now is in no small part due to the fact that you do have officers that bring that racism to the job and the power to act on it. And I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's only white officers that abuse their authority. It is not. You have some black officers that do it, Asian officers, Hispanic. The issue is the abuse of the authority and where it takes place, which consistently is in black and brown communities. Let me give you a very good example of what I'm talking about. When you saw the aftermath of the Michael Brown shooting, when you saw that rage, when you saw that anger, prior to let you know what the environment in Ferguson was with the police and the community, prior to Michael Brown being shot, there was a black man who was arrested during a traffic stop, taken into the station, beaten while he was handcuffed, and then charged for bleeding on the officer's uniform.
Oh, I know that.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, no, I know. We've talked about that case on the show before. But of course,
that's the environment.
The trust, of course, goes two ways, and police officers have a very difficult job. And as I don't need to tell you, I want you to take a listen to something that I heard on Meet the Press yesterday. It's the mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter. Take a listen.
You, in essence, have the citizens who want to be protected, right, who are now increasingly afraid of the police, and you have some police officers, right, who are increasingly afraid of the community.
Is that accurate, you think, that the distrust and the fear goes both ways?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the first step towards resolving that, if you want to have real dialogue, you have to have both sides fully acknowledge what they've contributed to the breakdown in the relationship. I've seen it more from the community side. I have never consistently seen it from the law enforcement side. We stick to the narrative that, our lives on the line, we take these risks every day. How dare you ever question any decision I make? If you understood what my training was, if you understood what it was like to be in a situation when you had to make a split-second decision, well, here's the thing. There are former officers and current officers who know exactly what that's like, but who still manage to respect the human rights and dignity of the people that we serve without abusing their rights and their bodies and then excusing it because we signed on to do a dangerous job. There has to be some acknowledgement, and I think the window of opportunity for that is right now. When you look across the country, there's right now an opportunity, a real opportunity, to change the way policing is done in our communities, and at the same time, work in communities to resolve issues that may contribute to the breakdown in the relationship as well.
And that's the fix that you write about in your op-ed in the Washington Post.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
The fix that I'm talking about in the Washington Post, Jake, is accountability, punishment. You can retrain, you can do whatever you want to do. I've sat in trainings, racial sensitivity trainings as an officer, and watched some of my fellow officers open up newspapers and read them while the presenter was presenting and ask, when do we have to stop listening, or when can we stop listening to this politically correct BS so I can get back to work? So training is one thing, but if you fail to adhere to it, as in New York City, where the New York Patrol Guide says you will not use chokeholds. Chokeholds include but are not limited to any hold that restricts air to the windpipe or the airways. And then you have experts come on national television and say that, well, obviously that policy is not workable. What he's saying when he says that policy is not workable, he's saying that obviously those officers don't adhere to it. Mm-hmm. They don't care about it. They don't follow it. Well, when they don't follow it, there has to be some meaningful accountability, and society, the larger society, has to understand that some officers do need to be held accountable. It doesn't mean you're anti-law enforcement. It doesn't mean you're pro-criminal. It means you're pro-responsible law enforcement.
All right, former St. Louis police officer Reddit Hudson, thank you so much for talking to us today. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Jake. Thank you.